And we are live.
Well, hello and welcome to the Waking Up Spiritually podcast. This is Wendy Rose Williams, and I'm here with Gregg Kirk, and we're so happy that you're here with us, either live or will be able to catch us via the archive. We podcast live twice a month on the second and the fourth Sunday, normally at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, but today we're an hour later. And so happy that you're here with us. I'm a past life adventure guide, and I help people release energy that doesn't serve them anymore. Things like anxiety, pain, and depression, so that you can live a life where you're feeling happy and healthy, and you can feel that you're living your life purpose. And my website is wendyrosewilliams.com. And let me turn it over to Gregg, who will introduce himself, and he'll also introduce today's topic.
Yes, my name is Gregg Kirk. I am a light worker, energy healer. I do in-person sessions with people with Reiki-like energy work with tuning forks. I also do remote sessions over the phone, and you can find me at greggkirk.com. That's spelled GREGGKIRK.com. And I'm a little wonky right now because I just did an online healing circle that we do every Sunday. So it's a meditation, healing, whatever. It's starting to get, I've called it a spiritual laboratory today. We're doing all kinds of interesting things. So, and you're welcome to, you can look at the events tab at greggkirk.com if you'd like to sign up for those. It's only $20. It's a great thing if you're looking for healing, but it's also a great place if you're looking for some spiritual adventures. So,
Oh, that's fantastic.
speaking of adventures, we are our topic today is alien origins. So it's everything from your own past life experiences off planet to interactions, abductions, encounters that you've had in this life, as and how they relate to your healing and ascension and so forth. So I'm going to turn it over to Wendy.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, I'm going to share my screen with you. And I want everybody to understand we're always coming from a place, Gregg and I are, of personal empowerment, and you just knowing that you are safe and you are loved. So I want everybody to feel, very comfortable with this topic. And there's lots of just meant to be informative for you. So let me share my screen. And we'll go into the PowerPoint here. All right, there we go. And alien origins, as Gregg said. So let's just go forward here one. So I think a lot of what's confusing on this topic of whether we're saying extraterrestrial, alien, galactic family, whatever term might be used, there's just such a contrast in the United States, at least, between the US government's lack of disclosure on this topic and pop culture can really be embracing it, sometimes in a positive way and sometimes in a let me scare you kind of way. That sort of energy. So many of us familiar with E.T. and, just such a sweet movie in so many ways of helping that little extraterrestrial get back home. Ancient Aliens is incredibly popular. And I think perhaps that's because so many of us just know in our hearts, from a common sense standpoint, it doesn't make sense. We're the only ones in the galaxy. That just doesn't even make sense to most of us. So I think that's part of why Ancient Aliens is just so popular. And one of the best books that I have found on this topic is by investigative journalist Leslie KEAN. And she spent, I believe it was 10 years researching this book. And UFOs, generals, pilots, and government officials go on the record is the title of it. And she wasn't looking just within the US, but she was trying to understand, why is the US government taking such a different policy of, no, it's not real, no, it's not happening, type of non-disclosure, except for some retirees, high up retirees, astronauts also, just different people who, very well-respected, well-educated, feet on the ground kind of people who have come forward and talked about experiences they've had. But Leslie was comparing with other countries and findings of what's gone on in other countries. And quote here, "At last, a serious and thoughtful book about this controversial subject. Skeptics and true believers will find a treasure trove of insightful and eye-opening information. This book is bound to set the gold standard for UFO research." And she also was able, under the Freedom of Information Act, to get some information shared publicly that was still not being shared by the US government. So I really applaud her work. All right, so there's three major categories of ET experiences, and they can be largely positive, they can be very benevolent, they can be loving and supportive. There can be amazing healings for people, including from cancer, from heart disease, from paralysis, whether it's through a session with a practitioner and then an off-world surgeon or healer is coming into that session to assist, for instance, or it might happen in your dream time. I've personally had that experience. There also can be feelings of family reunion because sometimes we have people who reincarnate on Earth and they haven't been here that many times, or maybe this is even their first time and they're just feeling pretty lonely and confused by the energy and what's going on for them. There also have been many ET experiences that have been related as being either neutral or a combination of experiences, both positive and negative, or the experience can change in either direction. There's a lot of research around what we call generational experiencers, meaning people who tend to have ET experiences find that is going on throughout their family. So it may have happened to their parents, their grandparents, it may be happening to their children as well as to them, and we'll get deeper into that topic in a little bit. There also can be tracking and other ET implants. And this, again, let's just be neutral about this. Does it serve you? Is it for a good purpose? Is it helpful to you now? If not, there's ways to have those removed. And I'd like to comment on those ET implants. They can be, and I know this can be kind of brain bendy. It's like, my gosh, can that really exist? Can that really be true? And they can be etheric, meaning they're energetic and there's nothing physically there in your body, but there still can be information that comes up that says, yes, there are implants going on. And Gregg, you were sharing just before we went on air an interesting story about someone who had physical implants that were actually removed. Could you share that?
Yes, sure. So back in the 1990s, I owned and ran a magazine in the Philadelphia area. It was an entertainment publication called Big Shot Magazine. And we did a lot of different wild kind of stories, not just about entertainment. And so one young woman came forth who was a musician who revealed it was a big deal for her that she'd been abducted. And the memories of the abduction were triggered by a television show she saw on TV that reminded her of her UFO experience. And then she actually came into our office. We took pictures of different parts of her body where pieces of metal had been placed within her. Some of them had been removed and some of them had not. So these are physical implants, I believe they were tracking. And I believe, I don't remember the details, but I'm pretty much think that the metal was not of Earth origin.
I was going to
So,
say it was probably otherworldly, and
yes,
then the surgeons in the OR team or whoever was removing it. There
right.
was a well-known podiatrist, I'm not recalling his name, but just has made a career out of removing a lot of this and trying to study and preserve what those metals are. Because it's just, as I said, just very mind-blowing that this can really go on, and for there to be physical evidence there.
I'll share the link to the story within the comments of
Oh,
this
that would be great.
broadcast on our website.
Please.
And just another interesting thing, just in general about UFOs. This was a strange thing that happened when we were at the magazine. So this is in the mid '90s, and not a lot of talk. Most of the talk that was about UFOs was negative, and that it didn't exist, and you're crazy for thinking that it did. But we received an envelope in the mail one day of a very interesting article that I'll provide the link for that too. I think the article is something like JFK, UFOs, and the CIA or something like that. It was how all these things are interacting, and that more or less that one of the people, the narrators of this story, had witnessed a gigantic UFO when he was on a US Navy ship. And he and other people on the ship witnessed this thing that was immense that came out of the ocean. That was just one of the experiences.
So it came up from the water?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. So not all UFOs are in the air. Some of them, are in the water and then leave. Anyway, I'll share that with you. But the thing that was so fascinating was that just anonymously somebody gave us this. It's a very long article written as kind of like a fiction story, but talking about real people and real experiences. So it was that back then, that was kind of like the only way you could talk to people with a straight face about UFO experiences, was to making it kind of fiction. So I'll share that article as well. I think people would, those of you who are kind of new to the idea of UFOs, it's a good entry point for sure.
Well, there's that expression, truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
The famous Mark Twain quote.
I agree.
So, all right. And then there's also negative or unwanted experiences where there may be an abduction. And then the question comes up, did you have a pre-life agreement to do that? And my comment on that is, yes, we make many pre-life agreements, but if it is not healthy for you now, if it's not something you want to be a part of or participate in now, end that agreement. I mean, we've all got free will. We need to declare our sovereignty. So we'll talk more about that. And implants, they may have been positive at one time, meaning they may have served us, but if we're still carrying them in our energy, in our etheric body, and they don't serve us, then, they just, in my book, they don't belong there. There also can be some mind control or some programming. There can be a negative voice. We've all got that, internal dialogue, that internal voice, but you should not be hearing a lot of voices saying, you may not do that, or that type of thing. Because if that's overriding your higher self and what you feel in your heart, in your gut is right for you. And when you start to do it, and I'm talking about something stronger than a self-limiting belief, because yes, we can have some of those too. And we're like, oh my goodness, I'm afraid to go on stage and sing publicly, for the first time. I mean, that's a natural, bit of stage fright or fear can be there, but I'm talking about something much deeper than that. So certainly free will violations, no, not okay. And there are ways to end those. So as I said, declaring your sovereignty, meaning we only are responsible for carrying our own energy. And because I personally was having a lot of trouble with this back in 7-10 years ago, etc. I was taught by my first spiritual teacher the Egyptian chant of Nu Q Set, and repeated that many times a day. and just was putting out that vibration. And what it means is I sit on the seat of my sovereign self. I'm sovereign. No one has the right to be in my energy, that I don't allow to be there. It's just me, myself, and I. So that's your sovereignty. And you certainly can call upon your higher self and guides to help you to declare your sovereignty. And as I said, end contracts that don't serve you, declare them null and void. And if you continue to feel like you're having experiences that you don't want, that don't serve you, that are frightening you, that are physically harming you, no, not okay. And that's when you want to work with a healer that's experienced with ET encounters. Gregg and I both have experience in that area. Or there's also a wonderful resource called MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. And it's the largest civilian UFO investigation organization, investigation and research. And it's an all-volunteer charitable corporation that was established in 1969. So that's been around for a long time. And there's the website for MUFON. But many people just simply haven't been aware of it, or just don't know where to look for something like that. Because yes, you can be feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm crazy, this can't be real, but you've got to trust your gut. And as Gregg said, times have really changed, and we are able to talk publicly about things like this and know there are resources to help us. I personally had a very odd incident on September 20th in 2016, so 4 years ago. I woke up rip-roaring mad. I was so angry, and I did not know why. It's like I hadn't had a bad dream. I mean, there was nothing going on in my life that would make me wake up just in this really like white-hot rage. So I was like, okay, what do I do with this? I mean, I was far enough along that I knew to work to ground and clear my energy, and I tried to do that. I just got ready for work and went to work and thought, be chill, Wendy, because I just feel this anger bubbling up, and it's just, not appropriate because I just don't understand it. So interestingly, my first spiritual teacher, incredibly psychic, and she contacted me, she texted me that morning and said, I feel tremendous rage from you. What's going on? What's happening? So I contacted her at lunchtime that day. And what we discovered, to my surprise and just upset, was we both had been involved in the Betty and Barney Hill incident, which was the first widely publicized report of an alien abduction in the United States. And it had happened all the way back in 1961. And I was born in 61. So it had happened just like literally 2 months after I was born. And my spiritual teacher was about 6 years old. And I knew that because she'd written in one of her books, she'd written about it being kidnapped with many, many, many other people in her home neighborhood in New Hampshire, which was where the Hills were from. And she'd written about all of, 50 or so people from her neighborhood, children, adults, all being taken onto a ship. And she's a little 6-year-old girl, so she wasn't frightened by it. She thought it was fascinating. And the ETs were very surprised that she was not like sleepwalking. She was not, she wasn't in an altered state. She was just like, wow, look at this. Wow, look what's going on. And then she, the next day in school, talked about it to some of her classmates because she didn't realize there was anything different about her conscious recall. And her classmates just made fun of her and said she was stupid and she was freaky. And they're all like, that didn't happen. What are you talking about? Because no conscious recall. So she was really traumatized by talking about it rather than by the incident itself. So if you're not familiar with Betty and Barney Hill, they were a New Hampshire couple, well respected in their community. And what happened was they went on vacation from their home in New Hampshire up to Niagara Falls on the US side in New York. And then they went on up to Montreal. And they had 3 hours of missing time on their way coming back from that, because that's when they were taken from their car as they were traveling alone on the road. And they both saw the ship. They tried to outrun it. They were both just petrified that such a crazy type thing could be happening that they just, never heard of happening before. And they reported it to the authorities after a lot of thought. And the physical evidence was gathered, and there definitely was physical evidence of them having been taken. Interestingly, because again, it was 1961, it was not shared publicly for 5 years, but the information or the evidence was kept. Barney then passed away quite early in his mid 40s, and his wife Betty passed on in her 80s and did not remarry. And Betty's niece, Kathleen Marden, states that Betty was ridiculed for the rest of her life because the story did come out publicly. And what this sign is, here's the marker. So there's, the marker on the roadside of where they were taken from. And the story was not shared until 1965. And amazingly, September 20th, 2016 was the 55-year anniversary of the abduction. And I didn't know that. And here I wake up just rip-roaring angry on that exact day. And then that's part of what helped my teacher and I kind of put the pieces together to say, as crazy as that sound, we were both also picked up. And they physically, some of the investigation they did was they physically mapped out where the Hills had traveled, on that trip, what roads they'd taken specifically. And both she and I lived right in that geography, me up in Quebec, in the eastern townships of Montreal, and her in New Hampshire. So that was pretty interesting. So I had to learn how to let go of that anger of an unwanted abduction as a little 2-month-old infant. And hello, a 2-month-old cannot agree. So you can argue, was there pre-life agreement? But enough. No. So that was an interesting experience. Now, Kathleen Marden, Betty Hill's niece, as I mentioned, she has become a leading researcher regarding unwanted ET abductions, because again, some of them are positive, some of them people do have, fantastic welcome experiences with. They learn things that, they write books from it. They just, it is something that they're interested in and wanting and to have continue. But for others, it's not. And Kathleen serves in MUFON, and she's written many books, both solo and with other people. And I included this one as another resource because Kathleen's book, Extraterrestrial Contact, What to Do When You're Abducted. I mean, it's a manual. It's how to declare your sovereignty and get that to stop, and to how to heal from it. And she did a nice interview on the Past Lives podcast on this topic. So I included that link here in the PowerPoint. So let's just stop here. Any comments, Gregg? Any questions from other people via our Zoom chat or Facebook Live? Because I can't see anything but my screen filled with the PowerPoint.
You know what? I'm trying to figure out how to knock that down without exiting.
Okay, well then maybe we'll just keep going and we'll jump in there. Okay, let's keep going then.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another experience I had. My youngest daughter contacted me when she was in high school. She had a panic attack at school in programming class, computer programming class, which I think is interesting, programming. And I couldn't clear her energy. She got home and I looked at her and I thought, yeah, this kid looks wonky. This poor kid, she does not look in her body. She looks, she was still looking like anxiety attack, panic attack when she got home. And, we're trying to, do everything right to get her feeling comfortable. I couldn't clear her energy. And that really concerned me. So I contacted my spiritual teacher, and she immediately said, this is a really serious attack and issue, and it's not over. And we need to, my recommendation is we both send her some energy and do an emergency session tomorrow and do a full session. So that was what we did. So here my daughter's off in school. I'm at work on my lunch break out in my car, and my teacher's down in California. So we're in 3 different places. And I knew that was going to be true before we scheduled it. And so I just had some inspiration the night before. And my guide said, just put some protective crystals, put a few small crystals in your daughter's backpack, because that's going to be with her. So that was like kind of the first thing my teacher said, was she's like, I'm trying to get our energy together from the 3 of us. I said, triangulate to the crystals. There's crystals in her backpack. I was told we're to triangulate to that. So that was exactly what we did. And what did we find in her field was three grays. And it was 3 small aliens of the species called grays. And they were harming her. They were not meant to be there. And my teacher was highly experienced with ET energy and removing things that were not meant to be there. And we were just trying everything. I mean, I'm just, kind of sitting there praying and holding the energy and just picturing my daughter well. And my teacher's doing all these things to get her energy cleared, and we couldn't get it cleared. And that had never, ever happened in any session I'd ever had with this teacher. And time was just really kind of running out on the session we had scheduled. And I was in an absolute cold sweat at that point, because this kid was just really being taken over. Finally, the turning point came, and my teacher just hissed at the 3 grays, and she said, we can see you, and her mother is here. And I'm like kind of sitting there going, that's your big guns? You've tried all these other things to clear her energy, and the best you got is to say, we see you, and her mother's here, referring to me. And I immediately saw myself turn into a mother bear. I turned into this like 1,200-pound grizzly bear. And I just ripped those grays right out of her field. It just was that simple. It's like, nope, you have no right to be here. And then we called in the Universal Police and said, please escort these beings up to the light. This is an absolute free will violation. My daughter does not give permission for these to be in her field harming her. So it was the lesson in mother bear energy. Do not mess with mother bears. But it was very interesting because I was so surprised. And then I had to deal with my worst fear, and my worst fear at that time period back in 2013, 2014 was, okay, I'm agreeing to do this spiritual work, not only on my behalf, but for mankind and for the planet. But am I safe, and are my loved ones safe? Are my children safe? Are my loved ones safe? That was my worst fear. And I had to deal with that and figure out how to work through that. But yeah, that was the big guns. Her mother's here. So life started to get a whole lot better once I realized, because I was having intense psychic attacks back in 2013, 2014. And on March 12th, 2013, my first session I ever had with that spiritual teacher was just an incredible shock and surprise. And what we found was I had been what's called a forced breeder. And there were just hundreds of non-viable hybrid babies in my field. And when she told me that and asked me what I wanted to do, my only questions were, can they be saved? Can they be helped? And when I heard no and no, it was like, then get them out of my field. I don't agree to these types of activities and free will violations. It's done. It's absolutely done. And what we found was I had a contract to help clear the last of the reptilians and the grays off the planet. And that was just leading to these psychic attacks. And that was just leading to all this warlike energy and all this rage. So I just had to look at, okay, are there other ways to do this more peacefully? Can this be accomplished with me not being in this war type role with them? And just found out, yes, there's other ways for this to be accomplished. It's going to be accomplished by other beings. And then I was able to just raise my vibration and frequency for the first time, because I had kept being told that, well, you need to raise your vibration and frequency, but how does one do that? When you're not feeling well, you're in a lot of pain, you feel like you're being attacked all the time. How does one do that? So what I learned when there were psychic attacks, what I learned was to just have no emotion. I was not going to engage. I was just going to observe and not absorb that energy. And I learned to just call in the universal police, call in the archangels, and say, please remove this energy. This energy is too low vibration for Earth. It does not belong here, and I'm not going to tangle or tussle with it. So that was the big change for me. And I began to old psychic attack energy to instead help people raise their vibration. So just outlined some of the steps here: aligning fully with the higher self, transmuting any karma, opening the Kundalini life force fully in a safe and sane way. And at that point, you've moved up to 5D when you've accomplished that, the fifth spiritual dimension, which is a level of consciousness. It's not like you've gone away and left your body and gone off planet. It's you here in your healthy body. And you then receive your sound activations from source, which for me was two beautiful Beatles songs at different times. And your upper chakras above your body, connecting your crown up to source, chakras 8 through 14 come in fully online, and you receive immense healing. Your heart chakra fully opens, and an ascended master will assist you on a daily basis if you'd like them to, because you're really starting to help mankind at that point. So that was just an amazing experience. Next, I was referred to a Native American shaman, because I still just had so much galactic energy that I couldn't quite seat it. I just was having a lot of physical issues. A lot of fear factor was still coming up. So he did a lot of psychic surgery for me that was very powerful with my permission, and removed massive implants and mind control programming, that type of, that I gave the example of earlier, of just saying, you may not do that. And it would be this like very tinny, mechanical male voice. And that's not my inner voice. But because I'd heard it my entire lifetime, I didn't know it wasn't me. So I just was so used to that annoying voice, just pulling me back, holding me back. And a funny moment with that. So when the shaman first said, okay, do I have your permission to start removing these implants? And they were primarily in my brain and in my mind. And I said, oh yeah. And I was trying to, kind of lighten the mood. I said, let me hold a little scrap basket here. I'm like holding the scrap basket out in front of me. You go ahead and pull those out, and let's, toss those out and then burn them up or whatever we need to do. And he's like, Wendy, I think we need something bigger than a scrap basket. So it's like, okay, great. I'm getting one of those rental Dempsey dumpsters, one of those humongo things you put out in your driveway. I was like, is that better? He's like, okay, yeah, now we're talking. And he really helped me in a very powerful way heal a lot of negative ET experiences, those kidnappings, those free will violations, those rapes, those things that had been done to my daughter, and start to be able to reunite with galactic family and just embrace some starseed origins. By starseed, I mean someone that has chosen to incarnate on a lot of other planets in addition to Earth, and is now here on Earth. And we also started to do some training so that I could seat my psychic abilities better, because I was just all over the place and I was having too much kind of psychic bleed through, and information coming to me that I didn't know what to do with, or that would upset me. I didn't know how to turn it off. I didn't know how to ground it. So he got me squared away in that area. And I then went on and did a 13-month training program to become a certified spiritual teacher, because there just was so much. There just was so much I needed to understand and wanted to be able to help others with. It's like, I need some formal training for this. And at that point, my master teacher came in, who is a very galactic being, but was here on Earth too. And my master guide came in. And I actually replaced my own heart chakra. That was one of my last steps to become a spiritual teacher. To my surprise, one of the very last classes, because it was group classes via the phone with a recorded phone line. And we were kind of like each, assessing ourselves and stepping up to the plate. The teacher was looking at us and the class was looking at us and saying, okay, do you look good to go? Do you need any changes? And my guides were saying, the minute I got on the phone that day to me, you need to replace your heart chakra. And I'm like arguing with them saying, you mean repair, right? You mean heal and fix. And they're like, no, you need to replace it. And I'm like, what? I don't know how to do that. Is that even a thing? Can you replace a chakra? So I did it right during that class when it was my turn, and said, I'm going to replace my own heart chakra right now. And everyone was like, ugh. And the teacher just said, okay, everybody stand back, don't get involved. She needs to do it herself, and just stand back and just send her love, and do not get more involved than that, because it's about empowerment. And I also was given a sword, an etheric sword was part of it. And I was very careful before picking it up, and asked my guides, and I said, I am not going to war. So why are you giving me a sword? And we went through this very powerful conversation. And the moment I said, yes, I will take it and accept it, I lifted it up over my head and I said, this is a sword of peace. And I see peace throughout the entire world and throughout the galaxy. And that's the only reason I ever touched that sword. So I did accept it, because I transmuted it. I was able to identify my home planets. Venus is one of them, and that came up in a really neat way. I was in a group class with my energy chiropractors, and we were doing a 2-day, weekend seminar in their office, and they played at one point this planetary tuning fork, and I immediately burst into tears. And we're meditating, so I'm like trying to be quiet, and I'm like trying not to like just sob. So it's like I could hear John Denver singing Take Me Home Country Road, and I'm like, why am I hearing that? They're like, it's your home planet. So I went to the teacher after the meditation during the break and said, what was that tuning fork that you played that set me off? And she said, is it this one? And she played one or two, and like the second one she played, so I immediately burst into tears again. It was the same thing. It's like, oh, there we go, Planet of Love. So that was really neat. I know I've also spent a lot of time in the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters. I don't have as much conscious recall of that. And interestingly, I believe my original first home planet, the first place I ever incarnated, and astrologers don't know about this planet yet, but it's called the Purple Planet. And it's still shielded at this point. Basically, what it does is it's very similar to Venus, but what it does is it sends the violet flame to Earth to allow us to lift up the energy and clean it up. And that purple planet first became recognized by a few spiritual teachers when Prince passed on, because that was also his home planet. And his purple rain, I can't even hear the song Purple Rain. I hear purple flame and I go, oh, violet flame. So, which correlates with my favorite book of all time, which is called The Seven Sacred Flames. One of them is the violet flame, written by Aurelia Louise Jones. So that's what I found out about my home planets, and continue to learn more. Dr. Linda Bachman has written a fantastic book. She was Dr. Michael Newton's original partner, and she's written a wonderful book called Souls on Earth, exploring our interplanetary past lives. And then I've just had a lot of experiences that I'll go through very quickly of how this just became kind of every day to me. And I was just able to go, oh, goodness, look at that. Just, one more interesting experience. A friend of a friend, I was coordinating a big dinner party. It was for a spiritual group. There were about 20 people. Brought her new boyfriend with her. And the minute he walked in the house, I was like, ugh, oh my goodness, can't stand him, don't want him here, don't like him. And I've never had such like an instant repel feeling from someone. He handed me his coat to hang up in the hall closet. I couldn't even put it in there. I waited until he wasn't looking and I went and put it outside. It was just, I've never done that in my life. It just was the weirdest. I was at war with myself. I'm like, can I just ask him to leave? Because it was just wild. So I made it through the evening. I just, like I said, could not stand him, but was just, honoring it's a friend's boyfriend and just let it be peaceful. And two of my friends who stayed afterwards, how you enjoy chatting after a party when the party's over and you're cleaning up and loading the dishwasher, and your good friends stay and help you do that part. They were dying laughing. They're like, yeah, we just could see you were hiding it really well, but we know you well enough. You just could not stand that guy. And one of my friends said, he's from a planet you've been at war with a really long time. And I thought, yep, there we go. And I did gently confirm it with her later. And she said, oh yeah, I know, he's had a lot of reptilian past lives. So, and then another time I fell asleep in front of the TV and woke up, and I just looked at my carpet because I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? And there was this reptilian on my carpet. And I'm like, no, that is not okay, not in my home. So I just called in the Universal Police, and that was removed within a second. And I just sat down and meditated because I was really irritated. I'm like, my home is my castle, and only highest vibration energy may be here. Why did that just happen? And what my guide said was, well, after you fell asleep, the TV program changed. It was something very low vibration was on that you wouldn't have watched. Because when I woke up, I was like, ew, what is this gross horror movie? I would never have put that on. And it had fallen. It was like energy from that film had taken on, physical form. And they said, you knew what to do with it. It took you 30 seconds. It's just no big deal. It's like, okay, but we're not doing that again. I'm declaring my boundary on that. And then a couple of years ago, I exhibited at an afterlife conference and had a wonderful time. I'm in Portland, Oregon for 3 or 4 days, hearing the speakers. And I had a table there that I'd rented. And this gentleman came up to me because I had my first book for sale. And this gentleman came up to me like kind of slowly and, awkwardly. And I just looked at him, and there was no one else around. And he just came and stood at my table, and I was hearing my guide say, be kind, just have a conversation with him. He's really new here. And I saw his face change to, a very alien life form. And he just was, very shy. I asked him, I said, are you an engineer by chance? And he said, yes, I work from home, and I'm just, and he just was very introverted, and he was just trying to practice having a conversation. So I did that, and just, gave him an autograph book, and just tried to, help him, have those sorts of social skills to have that sort of conversation, because it was really, really hard for him to do. Another time, I'm in my local drugstore. I'm in there maybe once a week, and I look over and I'm like, oh, there's a new cashier I haven't seen before, because I know most of them. And I just looked at him. I thought, oh, here we go again. I saw his face change to his typical presentation on another planet, and he was just overly eager. Had not been on Earth many times. Maybe it was the first time. And he was just in my energy too much. So I had to kind of like energetically, physically smack him back a little bit. Didn't do anything physically, except I think I did take a step back, because he was just, not in a disrespectful way, but he didn't understand boundaries. And he was asking me the weirdest questions that you would like never ask, like, what do you do for a living? Well, what does that mean? Well, how do you do that? It's like, it was just these conversations you don't have while you're just, ringing up someone's like 2 or 3 items. It was very interesting. Another experience, a security guard at a concert. And I was just enjoying a concert, and it was getting ready to start. I was looking around much more than normal, because I had 2 friends that were going to come and join me. And I'm looking for them, because I'm saving seats for them on the lawn. I'm like trying to hold this space for them. And I can see, like, kind of back over my left shoulder, I can see a security guard. And just something about him, my guide said, check out that guard. So I was really looking at him. I'm like, why do you want me to look at the guard? But I paid attention, and I did. And he took his sunglasses off for a moment. And he looked around that crowd of 3,000-4,000 people so fast and so hard. There's no way a human could have done it. And I could see him. And he was what's called a watcher. And he was just, there keeping the peace. And I thought that was interesting for him to be, a security guard at the concert. And I looked him straight in the eye. Again, I'm turning my head pretty hard over my shoulder, but looking at him, pretending I'm looking for my friends. And we made eye contact. And he saw me see him. And then my guide said, okay, leave it alone, look away. He knows, what he is, but he's doing something benevolent. Just leave it alone and don't look at him again. It's like, okay, that was different. Another time at my employer, there was a person who was, again, a watcher, meaning someone sent from another planet to just kind of learn about life on Earth. And she was meant to just be observing and, kind of reporting back. But she overinterpreted her role, and I ended up losing my job. It was quite interesting, because from the very first day I met her, my guide said, she's going to lead to your job being eliminated. I thought, oh, wow, how interesting to be told that. So just, had to ride it out and let that be. That's just the way that one was going to play out. And, couldn't be happier. That led to my self-employment, but it was interesting. The most encounters I've had have been in Mount Shasta, California. So if someone, is wanting and is ready for and is just craving those types of experiences, high activity there. All right, so my point is, ET experiences can be spiritually transformative. They can help us learn carefully chosen lessons and progress as souls. And we're all saints and sinners. So certainly, there's some forgiveness along the way too, and we need to forgive ourselves too. And just look for those lessons and use your sense of humor and your coping strategies. Okay, here comes Midnight, my kitty, to help. And just ground and clear your energy daily. Gregg and I have done several podcasts on that, as well as things about spiritual practices that can be helpful in those areas. And just learn how to raise your vibration and frequency. And we just all, get to do what we came here to do. And now midnight is right in front of my screen here. All right. He says, Wendy, you're done. So join us again next time, but certainly want to have discussion and questions. Join us next time. It'll be December 13th. And the topic's going to be how to create a magical you. And there's our website for where wakingupspiritually.com is where we archive all the past podcasts. And they're also on YouTube, thanks to all Gregg's hard work. And there's also our individual websites. So Gregg, I will take this down, and however I need to stop screen sharing, you might have to walk me through that or see if we can take control back of this again to look at comments. Oh, stop share. Here we go. Okay.
Oh, something happened in the middle of the broadcast.
Yeah, I saw that. Something changed. Backgrounds changed.
What did you see on your end?
I saw my screen go away, and then I also saw you, leaving for a bit and coming back.
Yeah, I've had my power was going down, so I got the low power warning, and I only had a few minutes left. So I grabbed a cord. The moment I plugged the cord in, my computer shut off.
Uh-huh. And this is typical. I mean, this was a sacred conversation. Everyone was very, very safe. I did a lot of things to bring in, benevolent energy before we started. But I just see it as a friendly thing. It's just like, yeah, we're here, we're with you.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to interpret it. I got that there was a bit of an interference, but
Yeah.
anyway, I think there's two videos that I'm going to have to splice together and make them into one.
Oh,
So,
I'm sorry.
no big deal. And there might be a little gap because
Sure.
there might be a period of time where.
And that's okay. If something's not meant to be publicly shared, I love how our guides just take care of it. I just trust, and I just, appreciate that's often the way it goes.
Right. So, I just would add just a couple things. I haven't had the rich experiences that Wendy's had on a personal level, but I have with clients, so energy clients.
Please, yes, let's talk about that.
And quite a few have had off-world past lives. And so how did I know that? Well, during the session, I start to see a life of theirs. So how it comes to me is kind of dreamlike, and I'll see them in a life not in a part of the world I recognize, usually. But in these cases, it didn't look like it was on Earth, and the beings around them, some of them were actually, I couldn't even comprehend them. So I only got a vague idea of their energy, and some of them I could see they were very tall, much taller than humans, and things like that. So I've also there was one of my clients was not aware of an abduction, and it came through.
And that's often the case.
Yeah. So, I
Our
asked her.
psyche protects us. I mean, there can be reasons when we're not ready to deal with something. Our psyche protects us.
Right. I was being sensitive to that. So I asked the woman if she had ever seen a UFO in, a part of the country where I saw it happen. And she said, as a matter of fact, yes, a friend of mine saw this UFO go up over a hill. I said, oh, okay. Are you prepared? Do you want to hear more about it? And
that's a perfect way to handle it. Yes.
Thank you. And really what was going on was she had signed up for the abductions because they were taking her eggs, and it was a part of a harvesting program of genetic studies they were doing, creating hybrids, alien human hybrids. So it wasn't as invasive as perhaps, and I shared the links to the Daria story that we wrote about in the magazine I owned back in the 90s. Hers was traumatic. She had, PTSD from it. This wasn't like that. So she had signed up for some of it for but she didn't remember it. So anyway, that's one of the things. But one of the more just interesting stories is at the end of most sessions, energy sessions I run, it's been kind of a routine where I energetically connect the person's feet to Mother Earth and then pull Earth energy up through them as a clearing using divine feminine energy. Well, interestingly enough, this one woman who I'd seen, she had a life in another world, and I'd seen that world. Her guide said, yeah, we're not going to connect her feet to Mother Earth because that's not her mother. Her mother is just the other planet.
Right.
We're going to pull that energy up through her. And I told her about it.
Just going to ask you that.
Yeah. So that was pretty interesting.
I completely validate that, Gregg. When I ground to the magnetic core of Mother Earth, and then I go straight on through and I ground in multiple other places and other planets, because that's what I need to ground. Right. So yeah, be open to that too. You know, if you just don't feel grounded and you're doing it, there's a reason. Yeah,
I didn't even know that was a concept until that happened. So it was interesting. Anyway, so we're at the top of the hour now, so I think this is a good place to wrap up.
Perfect.
And thank you for previewing our next topic.
Absolutely.
And again, just a quick aside, I used a live laboratory. We were doing some experiments with alchemy and magic creation just about an hour ago. So we have plenty to tell.
Oh, fantastic. Well, so look forward to that. And
yeah, looking forward to that one.
Yes. And listeners are welcome to contact me at my website, which is wendyrosewilliams.com. And you can request a complimentary 15-minute phone appointment there if you'd like to explore doing a session together. Because having a good session, it can be just life-altering. You know, if you need to change up what's going on in your life. And Gregg is such a fantastic practitioner too. So Gregg, if you can share your info again.
Yes, greggkirk.com. If you are an adventurous soul who would like to dip your toe into the waters of spiritual adventures, come join us every Sunday. And reach out to my website, greggkirk.com, and click the events button, and then that's how you register and join. So on behalf of Wendy and me, we'd like to bid you all a fond adieu and see you in 2 weeks. And have a great rest of your weekend, everyone.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Bye for now.